And we're live. You are listening to the Business Women Australia podcast show. And we are streaming across our major platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For those of you who are tuning in now and listening, welcome. Business Women Australia is a collective of extraordinary women, leaders across all sectors, across all states of Australia, and across all professions. And today we have the wonderful Jodi Cottle. Jodi is an extraordinary woman. She's a member of Business Women Australia, and we're going to have a dig into the high-performing and sustainable teams subject. And the reason why we're doing that today is because Jodi is just one of these amazing young entrepreneurs who has been entrepreneurial really since she was 19. She built up a portfolio of 6 investment properties by the time she was 25. I thought I was doing well buying one when I was 25, but Jodi is self-taught. She looked at property and investment expertise, and she then became a mortgage advisor in Auckland. You'll tell from her accent, she is a New Zealander. And later she moved to London. She garnered a reputation for her knowledge in that industry there in the corporate world, and she was a sought-after speaker. She was very keen on teaching people how to be successful in property investment to start off with. And in 2008, she published Young and Singles Guide to Property Investment, a book for first-time buyers that gained attention across New Zealand. And I was looking on her LinkedIn profile, and there were a couple of fantastic recommendations where people said that book actually changed their life. I know for me, getting into the property market at a young age certainly set our family up for success. Anyway, as Jodi's career progressed, so did her focus on business. So she completed an MBA in 2013. She actually specialised in sustainable customer experience strategies, very close to my heart being a marketing strategist. So Jodi and I have a lot in common there. And what actually that did was it took her to applying an understanding of neuroautonomy and neurophysiology in real-world scenarios. And as a result, she's just got this really deep and innate understanding of building cohesive, high-performing teams. I actually think it also might come from Jodi's own value systems as well. I mean, she's a team player. She grew up in the country. Her family were from a farming background. We talked about this sort of when we were planning this podcast. And we're very lucky to have Jodi move to Australia. She lives in the Gold Coast, right?
Yep.
Around Tweed Heads?
No, actually not North Gold Coast, actually.
North Gold Coast now?
Tweed Heads, but we're just north of, up in the hills of Narang, in the hinterland.
Fantastic. What a wonderful part of the world.
Yeah.
And she established a high-performing business within the world's largest aesthetics franchise network, Laser Clinics Australia. So you'll hear of us referring to LCA, that is Laser Clinics Australia. And her business has won multiple awards, including Franchisee of the Year in 21, Clinic Manager of the Year in 2022. And if you look at her email signature, there is a list of multiple awards and nominations and finalists for awards. But further than that, she is actually an author as well. So we have a lot to talk about. We want to really have a deep dive into that. But what I'm really interested in, Jodi, is what made you take that leap from corporate? I mean, things were going gangbusters for you. I mean, you were already a star by the time you were in your mid-20s. So why take that leap from corporate to franchise ownership?
I think there was a couple of triggers. One of the triggers when I moved to the Gold Coast, which was actually more for personal reasons. Honestly, I just started to see how the other half lived. You know, like the work wasn't number one, whereas for me, my career and my identity were all wrapped up together. So I was my career was me, and that's not actually that healthy. And when I moved to the Gold Coast, lifestyle was number one. Career, job, work, income, that was secondary. So that was a big factor for moving from corporate to franchise ownership. And not only that, when I moved up to the Gold Coast, there wasn't my job, head of customer experience, customer success. That job just didn't really exist up here in the same way as it does in Sydney and Auckland. So I suppose I just saw how the other half lived. It took me about 2 years to figure out kind of what I was going to do. That jump from corporate to franchise ownership is a bit of a jump. But in that 2 years, I did more study in neuroscience, did all this other stuff, did a few dead end things. And then I started looking into industries or just different things that I would be happy, where I would be happy for the long term. And I even looked at buying a boat, like and doing charters, because I was in the Gold Coast. And honestly, if I'd have done that, because that would have been in 2019, I would be living on the boat with my family by now, bankrupt, because of COVID would have just wiped us out, right? So I'm happy that I invested in a brand as opposed to doing my own thing at that point. So that's what I did. I researched the industry, and the aesthetics industry, number one, is, that industry is a solid industry for many reasons. It's a growth industry. I just felt that my money would be safe there. I'm not getting any younger, so owning a laser clinic had its perks, So and I just wanted to have that security, I think, of still kind of being with a corporate, which laser clinics is. You still have the best bits of a corporate. I had a salary, I had a good salary, I had the support of the franchisor, but I had all the best bits of being on my own. So I was my own boss. I had that freedom to really spread my wings, where I didn't quite get that freedom when I was in the corporate world. So that was kind of why I took that leap, I suppose. It gave me that security, but it gave me that freedom. And that's where I landed. And I landed with laser clinics in particular because, well, they were the best. They were the most professional. They had the most impactful brand. They were very slick with their operations. And I gained a lot of trust very quickly with them. And that's a very key value of mine, just having that high trust. You need to have that, when you're going into a laser clinic, like these girls are doing all sorts to you, you need to be trusting quite quickly. And it just aligned. They just aligned to my values. So it just was an easy decision in the end. I was really lucky.
And was it a big transition in terms of, going to a completely different industry? I mean, hair, beauty, aesthetics, image, it's a very, so many different reasons why people, their decision to actually go down that route. Was it fascinating space to be in?
Yeah, it is. And it was quite a different industry. Like, when I was in corporate, like as a woman in corporate, you were very, I don't know, you don't sort of open up to your feelings too much, right? Like you're playing in a man's world often, and you don't realize that you're doing that, but you can be quite guarded. In the hair and beauty industry, there's no filter, there's no guard. It's mainly women. So it was quite a transition into actually the hair and beauty industry. But because I've done all this neuroscience work, really, I could be in the freight industry, I could be in the data industry, in the property industry, in the hair and beauty industry. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in. You're dealing with human beings, and, the teams I'm able to create by having that neuroscience sort of knowledge. It doesn't matter what background you are, what sex you are, how diverse you are. Like, you're just dealing with human beings. So, that kind of made it not a cookie cutter approach, but it did make the transition easier for me because I have that mindset. But yeah, the hair and beauty industry was different from data, which is where I came from.
It's such a feminine space, isn't it, really? I mean, I know that there's a lot more men interested in this too, but they're sort of tapping into the feminine energy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And, I find that with Business Women Australia too, because I work a lot in corporate and professions. And I love the fact that in Business Women Australia, we are actually holding space, talking about feelings, building on our vulnerabilities as leaders, really embracing that feminine energy. And you're right, smack bang right within the vulnerability of actually beyond what feminine energy is about, but actually about how we feel about ourselves and how we appear in the world. And there's so much psychology in that space.
Yeah, there is actually. And it's been an interesting ride. It took me the first probably 18 months to really find my feet with the hair and beauty industry. And that basically came down to rebuilding the entire team from scratch. I actually came in 2 months after my clinic had opened. It opened in July 2019. I came in September, just purely because I was waiting on a house settlement and money to free up from New Zealand. I actually had to rebuild the whole team, and that took 18 months. And And again, like it was just, I just rebuilt the team with women that were very aligned to my values, and with an industry that has a 50% churn rate of staff per year. You know, we have got the same people since then. That's 2.5 years ago. You know, we've got the same people since, you know, when we built that team, and it was very deliberate who I brought into the business, which meant, you know, yeah, it's just been smooth sailing for us in terms of recruitment, because that can be a really difficult part of the industry.
And in actually developing a high performing, sustainable team, we're talking about sustainability in terms of they're able to stay, they're able to cope with things. We were just talking earlier on about, you know, how wonderful your team is in that they don't have to come to you for every issue. They're kind of self-determined in a lot of ways. So, you know, when we think about that, you know, in your book, you know, let's look at your book. Your book is The Pocket MBA, a woman's playbook for succeeding in business. And you've just mentioned values. Can I hear more about your view about values? Because you really hit that whole topic around values very early in that Pocket MBA.
Yeah, I do. And I do. I start there. I always start there. And it sounds fluffy. And, you know, if you're coming from like, you know, a background where you haven't had much to do with understanding or going through an MBA or learning all these strategic intent type things, it can just seem like fluffy corporate bollocks, you know, but actually, like when you actually get it right, you get the sustainability of a team. And that's what I've been able to do with not just laser clinics, but with every team I've had. So the values, like when I got to the clinic, like the girls were quite tense. There was you know, there was a bit of toxicity going on with some of the girls. They weren't having fun. They weren't upbeat. They weren't happy. There was limited trust and security and certainly focus. And I basically came and had a chat with my partner one night, and he said, well, what do you want the clinic to embody? I said, I just want it to be easy. I want it to be me. Like I want it to, you know, I want it to be fun and happy and upbeat and, you know, have high trust and high security. And they need to trust each other and all the rest of it. And so that's what those 6 words effectively became our values, our backbone of the business. And that backbone was me for 18 months, 2 years. But now that backbone is just the culture. That's just the norm. Now, if somebody comes into our business that we hire and we don't quite get it right, that they stand out quite quickly because they just don't align to the business. So that's, you know, that's sort of how I sum it up in a nutshell. But it starts there. Like if you've got a problem with culture in your business, 100% it'll be because you haven't outlined your values yourself, or you have, but you have people that are outside of those values. And it's just really, values are just, what do you want to be known for? Like, what do you want your business to embody? You know, like I had fun, happy, upbeat, trust, secure, and focus because those were important to me. And that's naturally who I am. But it can be anything, you know, it can be spirituality, it can be, you know, authenticity, it can be anything.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, happy, upbeat, trust, and focus. I mean, they're, you know, I guess, you know, when we think about values and culture, it's a bit like, you know, really, what do people say when you're not in the room, or what do they feel when they come in and walk into a place, and when they leave, how they're going to tell people what that was like, how they felt.
Yeah.
And that's really where, you know, I'm seeing through your Pocket MBA is really much that blueprint of actually understanding and knowing those values and then incorporating it into the operations so that the customer experience is going to be a wonderful one, because it's going to come from these beautiful values that you're really focused on. Now, look, let's tell me, I mean, writing a freaking book in your life. I mean, you're running a clinic, you're a mum, you've got an amazing dog and a gorgeous partner. Life is busy, and you've managed to write the Pocket MBA. I mean, clearly you're a sucker for punishment. You wrote a book when you're in the property space as well.
No.
So, but what inspired you? Why did you write this book?
Well, first of all, I had time to write the book because the girls run the clinic so well. They gave me time, the most precious commodity that we can all have as mums and in general, right, is time. So I had time. So I just wanted to, like, there's nothing wrong with me, but I just wanted to like leave a legacy. Like there's a legacy piece. I'm not dying or anything, but there was a legacy piece in it. That was what I wanted, why I wanted to write the book. There was a methodology that I had developed over time for the last 15 years of my leadership career. I've just gotten better and better and better at executing this methodology to a point now where I can just quite easily talk about it or write about it. And I just put pen to paper. I just started, it was quite therapeutic actually. Just put pen to paper and just contextualized all the models that I used, all the leadership models with all my own stories. So it could give the reader some insight as to how I've done it, not just what I've done. Because there's a lot of books like that, right? This is what to do, not how to do it. Like it's, you need to have that sort of reader going on that journey with you. So I just, it took me about probably 4 or 5 months to actually pull the content of the book together. And then I went, the next part was obviously getting it published. And I was really lucky to have Wiley and Sons publish it. And now the book's throughout the world, in stores around the world, which is really quite exciting. So
that's
so really it was just a legacy. It was a legacy piece, really, just to help people, because a lot of people have so many, they find it really hard to find and hold on to staff, and then find and hold on to customers. And that's what the book's doing. It's helping you have sustainable like teams and customers. That's really in a nutshell what it helps people with.
And it's really a gift, isn't it? I mean, who are buying the book? I mean, who's going to get value out of this book?
Well, it'll be any leader, so any manager or leader in a business. So that could be a large global corporate, it could be a small corporate, it could be, just a mum and dad business. So anyone who's leading teams. And then it's also really good for business owners. So there's, the first and second sections, it's in 4 sections. So you've got leading yourself, which is part of that value alignment piece, and then leading your people, which is sort of delves into some of the neuroscience frameworks that I've always worked off, and then leading your customers, which is a lovely framework called Sustainable Competitive Advantage Framework, but it just gives you 4 phases of how you go through and find and keep great customers. And then the last section is leading your business. So that's actually like how I researched the industry when I first put into LCA. I used a particular model called PESTLE, which is effectively going out to all the macroeconomic stuff that you might not ordinarily look at, but it just forces you to go look at political issues, sociological issues, technological issues, economic issues, all these things that are so outside of your control, but would affect the industry that you're buying into. So then it looks at competitive landscape modeling as well. So, a business owner will get a lot from this book. Any business owner, large or small, but leaders will also get a lot from this book as well.
Look, I think there's another market for that book. Just are people that are considering buying a business and looking at how then that they might operate a business, like right at that early stage as well. Because I can see, Jodi, that something that you've done, that you bring your expertise and your knowledge frameworks to, is that whole assessing of the opportunity. I mean, when you talk about that PESTLE model, you applied that thinking when you chose this space, even though you knew nothing about it. It was such a wise decision because of all those factors, and it therefore being a growth industry. And then you did your research into who are the best in the industry that are going to serve, and collaborate and help create my success. So that is an incredible bit of insight that we're kind of tapping into in terms of your own talent and your genius, and that you bring to the table. And I think that even if people haven't yet bought a business, that they should really buy that book, read it and think about what kind of business they want to have, and use some of that thinking around evaluating and assessing. Because I think quite often we assume that the business that we should buy in has to have the same expertise that we've come out of. And what I find very refreshing about your way of thinking and approaching is that you actually have viewed your business as an investment. And this business is going to serve me rather than me having to work in the business. And I think that in itself is extraordinary and a very great lesson for us all to learn and be very acutely aware of when we're thinking about our own pathways in terms of wealth. Wealth creation and lifestyle, and wealth is well-being. Let's think about, wealth is really, the ability to have choices and freedom in which to spend the time with our loved ones in the way that we want to do. It's really work as money tickets, tickets for fun.
There's actually a third piece to that as well. Some in that section 4 part of the book, it wasn't, once I decided, obviously LCA, the hair and beauty industry, there was a third part to it where, if I initially wanted to put the clinic in Southport in Gold Coast, and once I did this other piece of analysis, which is called Porter's 5 Forces, which just allows you to look greater than just the competitive landscape of your direct competitors. When I actually went through that analysis and really understood my direct competitors as well as everything else, I went away from Southport because it was saturated. I learned very quickly that it was a saturated. So even though LCA was the right brand and the hair and beauty was the right industry for me, had I have put it in Southport, I probably would have failed. So
totally. That's your gap analysis, right?
Where I went to, yeah, that's it. So where I went to gave me the best chance of success. So you've got to think about that too. So there's more pieces of that puzzle to consider. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, why do so many businesses fail? It's because a lot of business business buyers will do it based on an emotion or a feeling or some ideas that they have without doing all this deeper research. And with the research, then, as you said, you've actually started, you crossed out some, okay, there's the potential. No, that just doesn't fit the criteria that I'm starting to develop to be important to ensure that I have a sustainable business. And so you're setting your team up then for great success, because not only have you gone in to think about the kind of business that is going to work with the best possible parameters around it for success, but then what kind of team do I want? So tell me a little bit about, obviously we've talked about your values and you've talked about being happy, upbeat, trust, and focus. So, a lot of people say, how do I find out my values? I don't even know what my values are, other than family and, being a good person it might be a faith-based thing. People get it caught up with faith and religion.
It could just be family. Like, there's a useful exercise in the book, and I've got it's quite interactive, the book. Like, all throughout, there's lots of different exercises you can do to uncover your values, for example. So I think it's like page 7, there's a values exercise, and it just shows you a table with a bunch of words, and you just, whatever one resonates with you, just whatever resonates with you. It could be, as I said before, like spirituality or travel, or, it could be anything that word that just sort of jumps out at you, or family. It could be family. We all have a value in family. So it's useful to employ people that have those same family values. It's just, otherwise you've just got people that just don't understand, when you've, like I have, I've had a few single mothers that have worked for me, and I get it. I totally can relate, and I get it. So I basically let them pick their roster. If they have to leave at 2, they have to leave at 2. Then I find someone else to start at 2 and work through till 7:30. I don't question it. If they have to be off work with a sick kid, they have to be off work. Like, there's never any making them feel bad at all. So if you have people that are misaligned, then, when I've had it in my past with corporate, with bosses, that would make me feel like shit because I've got a sick kid off, like an absolute shitstorm, really, of all sorts of things that go wrong with toddler age children. Like, you don't need to be made to feel bad. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to be with them. So why, you can do work from home a lot of the time. But yeah, so just those values, it's just figuring out what resonates with you, and then figuring out if that's who you've got working with you.
Yeah, it's just, I think a lot of people think it's more complex and overthink it, perhaps.
Yeah, they do. I think they think it's way more fluffy than what it is. It's just figure out what are those 4 or 5 words that resonate mostly with you, and then have that as the backbone of everything. So everybody I recruited, every one-to-one, every team meeting, every disciplinary meeting, it's really hard to talk to people about behaviors in a company. Often it's hard to have those discussions with disciplinary meetings around behavior. But if you've got a set of values to point to, like if you can say, oh, well, that particular behavior on that day was in misalignment to our trust value, and this is why, it just makes it a lot more objective than sort of them feeling attacked. I think that's how I've always used it, especially if you've got a person that has always, is meeting all their KPIs. So on paper, they're excellent, but it's their behaviors that are actually not good. And that's what you need to have the conversation about. When you've got a strong set of values, it makes that conversation a lot easier, because it's not as personal. It's more about their behavior and for me, the clinic's values. You match those, as opposed to I'm telling you off because you did this or you did that,
Yeah, that's useful. That's really useful. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the first 2 years really is make or break, right, in any business.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at
it took me at least 18 months to build the team. And honestly, it wasn't easy. There was those 18 months, the first 9 months in particular, I actually quite dreaded going to the business every day. It was hard. It was really hard. I was there from opening to closing a lot of the time, and it was hard yakka, but I was determined to make sure that I surrounded myself with people that I could work with, basically, because otherwise it becomes a lot harder, and it's ongoing. Then it's sustainably hard rather than sustainably good. So yeah, it did. It took me time. You do have to commit to it. You do have to persevere. And be prepared to sort of go back before you go forward. We would often take 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward. But we got there in the end, and we've been there. We've held it for a long time.
Well, congratulations on that. I mean, it's just such a great success story. I mean, when we look at 80% of independent new businesses fail within their first 5 years. I mean, that's staggering. Yet, I think you were saying to me only 20% of franchise businesses fail. Why do you think that is?
I think just because of the branding, the support. It's already a bona fide business. It is a lot safer, especially if you're coming into owning your own business for the first time. Those statistics certainly don't lie. And it is interesting that women, it's grown substantially. I think 83% increase or something in women franchise ownership, because it just, with women as well, it just takes us completely away from that gender pay gap issue, or all that stuff that can happen to women, or discrimination, all of that just becomes a thing of the past. And that's what I've really enjoyed. It's just not even, and I think that's what's made me so passionate about helping women in business in particular, because I didn't see when I was in corporate just how bad a lot of that stuff was. It wasn't until I got out of corporate, running my own show within a franchise, that I realized just how clipped my wings were.
Yeah. And you've become the master of your own destiny, in that you've been able to sit back and say, well, okay, I've got the opportunity, like your partner said, what do you want this to look like? And you've been able to say, well, this is what I want for it to look like, and I can then attract people who also want to work in an environment that looks like this too, that will share these values, and that they'll thrive in that environment.
Yeah. It's just way more fun. It's so much more fun when you're working with people that you align to. It makes everything. Like me and my manager those first couple of years, and my manager now, we have a huge amount of fun together, and I love them, And it's like you can say that there's actually a bit of a blur between that professional and personal, but to be honest, like authenticity, human nature, it's always going to be blurred. That is what it is, but it's not so much like that in corporate. But I unashamedly and unapologetically blur that line, because if they know the real me, I'm not acting a different way at work than I am at home, within reason, So they get to know the true me, which means, they know that I'm all into my servant leadership, and I'll bend over backwards for them. I'd do anything for them, and they know that, And these are the people that stick with you when the going gets tough, like through COVID, like through the borders closing, like when the floods hit. We've had a terrible time in Tweed Heads. It's been really quite hard, but we've got through it.
Yeah, and look, something else that is coming up for me through all this is that they're also seeing the real you. You're not perfect, and that's okay. We don't all have to be perfect. Yeah. So 49%, you were saying 49% of working mothers feel discriminated at some point in their career, and 32% actually resign. I mean, this is a really big issue. I mean, let's talk about working mothers. I mean, you're a mum.
Yeah.
It's tough for working mum. It's for any parent. I mean, not just mums, but working dads now too. A lot of dads are sharing way more of the responsibility for parenting than in my day, when I was in my in my early career. And it's great, but I'm seeing it that parents are struggling.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a really interesting statistic I read just the other day. 47% of women will face or are facing burnout. That's almost compared to 34% of men. So that tells you a lot. A lot of the hybrid work environments apparently not as good for women as what we first thought, and that they you're at home, you work from home or whatever, like there's washing to do, there's all these different things that are in our way in amongst doing the conference calls and all the stuff we've got to get done in a day. It's actually easier to just separate it, go to work and then come home. And, when you're at work, you're at work, when you're at home, you're at home. So there's some pretty alarming statistics, and, it's I don't think it's quite equal yet, but I think there's a lot of good steps being done. I think, men are definitely coming around to sharing the load, but, it's the woman that's usually figuring out, you've got a parent-teacher interview, you've got book club, you've got all these things just popping into your head, and then you've got all the stuff with the business and the team, and this girl broke her finger here, so you've actually got to figure out a change in the roster, and you've got, there's just a constant, So yeah. I mean, I was away just last week, and my partner actually said he has a newfound appreciation for when he comes at home at night. He doesn't have to, he just has dinner, and he doesn't have to really do too much thinking. But while I was away, he had to do everything, I'm surprised the dog's still alive and fed,
That's
yeah, so it's getting better, I think. But yeah, there's still a long way to go in corporate. I think there's a long way to go to help women, really, because a lot of the discrimination stuff, I think, is a perpetual issue. I think I didn't even know how bad it was until I stepped out of it. The gender pay gap, that shouldn't even be a thing anymore. Feeling bad when you get pregnant or have your maternity leave, or when women actually do leave early because they go and get their kids or whatever. Often there can be a feeling of, what am I missing out on? What big meetings am I missing out on? And that causes stress to women too, because they're actually missing out on some of those bigger discussions that their colleagues are getting that they're not getting. There's a lot of articles and statistics around that too. So yeah, it's tricky. It is tricky to have it all. And I think the one thing that I love about the franchise industry and what I've been able to accomplish here is I have got back my time, and I have changed my identity as to who I am now. It is a lot more about relationships, a lot more about my family and my people than my job title, my salary, my all of that. That's not there anymore, not in the same way. And, the income's enough to survive and be happy, and as you said before, you have enough wealth that you have options and things, but it's not, doesn't take over your life.
Yeah. So what are the things, just to wrap up, we're coming to the end of the podcast. It's been fascinating. There's so many more things that I want to unravel. Before I get to my last question, I just want to let everyone know we are going to get a little bit more of you. I think we've booked you in for a BWA masterclass, actually looking at some of the frameworks that you actually share in your Pocket MBA. So that'll be on the 3rd of November. Anyone who's listening to this podcast now, jump onto our Business Women Australia calendar. It's on the Business Women Australia website. All our events are on there. You don't need to be a member. There's always guest and non-member tickets available to anything that we put on. We, of course, would love anyone who is listening, who's not currently a member, to have a think about joining. Reach out to our BWA coordinator, the fantastic Leanne Jeffrey. Connect to her on LinkedIn, connect to me on LinkedIn, connect to Jodi on LinkedIn. We would all love to connect to you. We have a wonderful community across Australia, and we love to and welcome more members. If you're just thinking about joining, you can come in as a guest to any of our events. So the interesting thing about the High Performing and Sustainable Team Masterclass is that this is a really important time, because people are losing a lot of staff. There's staff shortages across the board. It doesn't matter what sector. And it's a really important time to think about developing a team, isn't it, Jodi?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, we know it costs a lot more to rehire and retrain. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it would be nice to also see, in addition to the business owners and managers and the people that we've thought would get value from this book, maybe be good to see some people and culture professionals, perhaps also some HR professionals. Of course, anyone who's thinking of doing an event, we would love you to consider Jodi as a speaker, as a keynote. That's another feather to her bow. She's such a wonderful, as you can see, an engaging speaker with so much knowledge. And what I love about Jodi is that she's brought all this MBA sort of strategy stuff, and she's kind of made it really clear for a business owner who hasn't gone to uni to understand how to apply. And I think that's what I love. I mean, all those frameworks I learned during my university, my commerce degree, and I did my honours. And I just loved seeing how you've taken these complex theories, but you're actually applying them in real life, and you're showing people how they work. They've come out of years and years of research studying successful business strategies across the world, and Jodi's actually been one of those people that's remarkably been able to simplify it, apply it, and actually share that knowledge with us. So I think what we're going to be doing in this is we're going to have looking at what kind of culture you can develop in a part of your recruitment strategy as well. So we're really going to pick Jodi's brains on that in this masterclass. And she's also going to share a couple of leadership frameworks with us to foster high-performing work environments, and also share her insights in measuring accountability and competency in staff to maintain and keep maintaining that high performance where it's not stressful, where, as she said, it's joyful, it's fun, everyone's collaborating and supporting each other in doing that. So I'm really looking forward to that masterclass, and I'd love to see, I think it's Queensland time, 12:30 on the Gold Coast, 10:30 Perth time in the morning, 1:30 Australian daylight saving time for Sydney, Melbourne people. So look, that's going to be a ripper on the 3rd of November. We look forward to that. But I'd like you to leave us with your thoughts on, what has been the most enjoyable thing about being a franchise owner. When you think about and reflect on your achievements, so many achievements since you first started. What are the things that really stand out the most as being the highlights for you?
Honestly, it sounds cliche, but it is the people, like the network of people, and then my team. The network throughout the franchise. They're great people. They're smart people, and they want to do best by the brand, and it's been they buy the book, and it's very textbook, a lot of the stuff that they do, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the professionalism that is the brand, and that is the people. And then of course my staff, but we have the best time. We've when we can, we have the best time, and it's been a wonderful journey to bring people along with me on the journey that I've selected in my team, and then of course people that I've met through the actual network itself, the other franchise owners, the corporate head office staff, all of that. We've been really lucky.
It's incredible because you've just come back from a conference in Sydney too, I know, and I really appreciate that you've jumped onto this podcast when you've pretty much just flown in and you're probably dying for a massage.
It's been a big week, that's for sure. Yeah,
it's been a big week. So anyone who is interested in learning more about Jodi and about Laser Clinics Australia, you can jump onto the Laser Clinics Australia website. There's a fantastic piece there with Jodi's background and the wonderful article, and you can actually inquire about becoming a franchise owner, in your area, and maybe do some of that research. And I'm sure Jodi will be open to sharing her insights around that with you. We are obviously coming to the end of this. Our recording of this podcast will be available on Apple iTunes, on Spotify, and on the Business Women Australia website. If you aren't already following us on YouTube as well, we are on YouTube, Business Women Australia. You'll find all the recordings of our podcast and our interactive webinars, as well as on our website in our resources section. So thank you, anyone who's listening today. Thank you for anyone who watching and listening to the recording. Thanks for your support. We love you all, and thank you so much, Jodi Cottle. You're extraordinary. We're so happy to have had so much of your insights today with us.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me, Lynn. I really appreciate it.
It's wonderful. We'll have it. I'm sure even after our masterclass next year, we'll get you back for some more insight.
Love it. Love that.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye.